Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and recently I took a trip to the UK and to Portugal, which I've mentioned in quite a few videos now, and I'm sorry if you're sick of hearing about it, but I swear this is where it gets good. But before it gets good, I just want to preface by saying I just went there for vacation purposes, you know, for relaxation, you know, what you do on a vacation. And then while I was there, I did a crap ton of game hunting. That's why this gets good. But I do want to eliminate any conspiracy theories where people say, like, oh, he just went there to game hunt. That would be insane. I wish I could do that. But no, I went there to have a nice family vacation. And upon my presence there, I would often just go off and do some game hunting because that kicks ass. That's also where I got this awesome Union Jack shirt from London. Ironically, I spent almost no time in London. Upon landing, I basically got a car and hopped out to Cardiff, which is in Wales. And I met up with a buddy of mine named Raymond. You guys have probably heard me talk about him ad nauseum over the years on this channel. Awesome dude who is great at repairing game consoles and modifying game consoles and so on. But yeah, he's the guy I wanted to hang out with first when I was there. And he took me to an awesome store called Next Level Games. Now I just did a whole video, which you can click there and see it, a whole video about a tour of that store. It's a great store. I had a phenomenal time there, which I'm going to talk more about here in a minute. I can't recommend it enough. If you live in the UK, it's a small country. You can get there. I would know. I drove from London to Cardiff, which was like a 3-hour drive. Everyone was like, that's crazy. Why would you drive that much? It's like, dude, I drive that much like every other week from Chicago to Madison. Pull up Google Maps if you want to know the geography. Because I work a lot up in Madison and I live in Chicago. So the drive meant nothing to me, but it's just, I'm just saying, if you live in the UK, there's 70 million of you guys who live there. Go to that store. It's an awesome store. Can't recommend it enough. I want to show you guys the pickups I got there. Rather than, at the end of this month, rather than doing a playload where I talk about everything I got at this store and that store, all combined into one like 2-hour-long video, I just thought it would be better if I do a tour video of a store, because I shot a lot of tour videos, and then follow it up with a video where I talk about everything I picked up and go into greater detail about my experience at that store. Provided the tour video is long enough to merit being its own thing. Sometimes maybe I'll bookend it a little bit. Tell me what you guys think about that concept. There probably still will be some version of Playload, but it's probably going to be smaller than usual. Again, like the previous one. So, there you go. So this, in a sense, is a glorified pickups video in which I also talk about the great experience I had at this store. While kicking off all the vacation talk. I swear I'm not going to have you guys just watch like home movies and stuff. I wouldn't do that to you. You guys don't have to see footage of my hotel room or anything weird like that. Or like monuments I visited, any of that shit. I'm not going to force you to do any of that. That'd be crazy. We're going to talk about gaming because that's what we're all excited about. Now, when it comes to game hunting, I don't get to the chance, I don't know about you, but I don't get the chance to go to other regions, other gaming regions particularly often. Gaming regions meaning there's really only 3 of them. There's the North American region, there's the European region, and then there's, of course, Japan. Obviously, the world is bigger than that, but the other countries often share games from those regions, if that makes any sense. Like Australia basically uses European stuff, and, you know, etc. South America is kind of its own thing, which is cool, but it's mostly known for Master System these days. But whatever, that doesn't really matter. Point is, I don't get to go to other game regions often. I get to go up to Canada, but since they're in the same region as me, it doesn't do much for exclusive. So I wanted to use that experience as best as possible and most efficiently by figuring out exactly what games I was going to keep an eye out for. Because I didn't want to walk into a game store and see like, oh, that's a pretty cool game, I should pick that up, and not really know what it is, and then get back and find out, you know, oh, I could have bought that down the street, and now I got this region-locked version that's much more difficult to use, etc. You don't want to do stupid things like that. You want to plan for something like that. So, at the time I make this video, and at the time I was preparing for my trip, the console of choice for me, the one that has my heart for hunting, is the Sega Saturn. I am on a quest, as it were, to get a complete North American set of all Sega Saturn games, which is not easy, but I am working on it, chipping away. But the number is somewhat reasonable. It's like 243 games once you eliminate all of the duplicate versions or games that were released twice with 2 different names, you know, that kind of thing. I'm not including like Daytona USA and Daytona USA Netlink Edition. You know, just one version of Daytona USA is fine. Although I think I did get Daytona USA and Daytona USA Championship Edition. So that's breaking my own rule a little bit, but whatever, you get my point. There's basically 243 games. Now when it comes to that kind of game hunting, when it comes to the collecting, as far as I'm concerned, there's no incentive to buy the European and Japanese version of a game you already have, unless it's a special exception type of game like, oh, I don't know, Shenmue. Then I would buy every version of it. But for the most part, you don't need to do that. You just want one copy of each game. So I always prioritize my own region, North America. And then after that, my second choice is always Europe. And the reason I do that is because, well, the presence of the UK in the European Union means that most games will be available in English, and therefore incredibly playable, because as someone who only speaks English, that's awesome for me. Whereas Japanese stuff, I can't really use it that much, unless of course it's something like a fighting game, but you get my point. It's nice to be able to have it in your own language. Now, upon doing research there, I realized that there were only 32 games released for the Sega Saturn that were not released in North America, and this is the list I comprised. As you can see, this list has kind of been through the war. It was in my pocket for many, many places, folded many times, but here is my list. Now, thanks to Raymond, I already had one of them, so there was only 31 to go. And yeah, I managed to find some others, which I will go over in a minute. And just for reference here, I probably will never ever pursue the Japanese Saturn stuff. Again, here's your numbers. 243 North American, 32 European. Take a second. Why don't you take a second, don't look anything up, just guess. Say something out loud. Say a number of exclusive games you think came out in Japan for the Saturn, games that did not see any iteration in North America or Europe. Shoot a number out. Go ahead. I don't know what you said, but the actual number is 1,400. It's over 1,400. 1,400 plus exclusive titles. In other words, fuck that. I'm never going after all that. That's crazy. Even if you found a lot where they were willing to sell every single game for $1, which you would never find, that's still $1,400. So, sorry, never going to go after that. But the European stuff, with only 32 games, even if some of them are very expensive, still a much more reasonable pursuit. So that was my highest priority. And so I got a few of those at Next Level Games, which is an awesome, awesome, awesome store. And before I go into these pickups, which I swear we will do, I do want to talk a little bit more about that store because I didn't have the opportunity to do so in my tour video. That is one of the most genuinely kind-hearted and just down-to-earth video game stores I have ever been to. It was phenomenal. The two guys who run it, their names are Dave and Chris. Very just real dudes. You know, you just go in there and you can just talk to them about, you know, gaming and pop culture and media. You can talk to them about whatever. They're open for conversation, and they're just very cool guys. It was really a lot of fun to spend time with them. I thought I would go in there and spend, you know, maybe like 45 minutes, possibly an hour at most, just kind of looking at game stuff, figuring out what I wanted, and then buying and leaving. But that wasn't the case, man. It was just so much fun to be in there that I didn't really want to leave. So yeah, we just hung out all day. It was great, man. Like we ordered food, you know, and we got they kept buying me coffee, which was very nice. And they kept going down the street to a local Costa, which is like the British equivalent of Starbucks, even though they have Starbucks. They kept buying me coffee, which is very nice of them. I told them they didn't have to do that, but they kept doing it anyway. So I drank it because it was great coffee, so it was very cool of them to do that. But yeah, man, I can't recommend that store enough. If you're ever in the UK, or if you already live there, and I know a lot of you guys do, go there. It is totally worth the pilgrimage. Of course, check their Facebook page, links in the description. You can see like their hours of operation and everything. Maybe contact them ahead of time if you so desire, but great place. I really can't stress enough how awesome that store was and how much fun I had there and how great it really was to be there. And I really hope I get to go back there again someday. But for now, let's talk about the stuff I did manage to get there. Again, Sega Saturn was my priority, so here's what I found. First up was Riven, the sequel to Myst. Now, what I find funny about this is the fact that this game actually says right on it, the sequel to Myst, which says to me something about their marketing team being like, Riven's a creative name and all, but I don't think anybody's going to know what it is. Can we just put that it's the sequel to the previous game on it? Okay, whatever makes it sell. But yeah, I think that's pretty much that. There probably was a board meeting kind of like that at some point. Sadly, it's not totally complete. The way that Europe got totally screwed when it comes to cases for the Sega Saturn, this is the better kind. It's basically like a jumbo DVD case. It's slightly oversized. It can house 2 discs and a manual. They're fine. These cases are okay, but they have no way to hold together. So what they were doing was they had like cardboard sleeves. You kind of held it in if it was a 4-disc game like this, which unfortunately they didn't have with it, which they made up for by including this. This is a strategy guide for the game. So hey, win some, lose some. But that was pretty cool. Yeah, these cases though, they don't actually hold the disc very well. In fact, you can kind of hear there's a disc already loose in there. And these are the better cases. You're going to see the crappy ones in a bit. But I was very happy to find this game in particular because this is on the list of rarer games for the European exclusive. So it was really cool. This is actually the first one I found, so it was really awesome to get that. So moving on, I also picked out Wipeout 2097. Now, Wipeout we got, but we didn't get this version. This is a sequel of sorts, I guess. Yeah, we didn't get this, so it was very cool to find that. This is also one of the more common ones. I saw this in quite a few places. This is a super common one. Jonah, Lomu, Rugby. Sports game, of course, for a sport we don't play here. But hey man, those are the rules, at least my collecting rules. You can't, even if you don't like sports games, you still got to pick them up if you're going for complete sets. Fortunately, they're always cheap, and you often get them in lots without even trying to buy them. And they make great donor cases and donor cards, etc. So not all bad, but they look good on a shelf. And finally for the Saturn, I got Destruction Derby. Now this is one of the paper Saturn cases. These are the worst cases perhaps ever. Alright, so here's the deal. This is, you're looking at it like, oh, that doesn't look too bad. What's so bad about that? This has a plastic layer around it protecting the paper part. The paper part is removable. You can put it into another case. This has no plastic around it. The artwork is the part that takes all of the hits. Nothing protects it. On top of that, from a strictly structural standpoint, the cases don't hold together well. Watch it. Look at that. There is no effort to make that open. That's the best clasp that it can possibly form. In fact, it was so bad that you will often see pieces of tape. In fact, you will always see pieces of tape around the edges. This is not from stores or from used stores being like, well, we got to keep people out. That's from Sega. Sega themselves did that. They wrapped tape around and were like, shit, our cases are opening in the store on the shelf because they're crappy. So they recalled a bunch of them, put tape over. Horrible, horrible design. And it gets even worse, believe it or not. Inside, the part that actually holds the disc often doesn't really hold the disc. It often pops out. I'm actually kind of astounded it is holding right now. And on top of that, the case, the way it's is designed, is it's basically a piece of cardboard at the bottom, and they have this plastic shell that they just kind of glue onto it, and then that's supposed to hold together somehow. And I can't tell you how many Saturn games I saw while hunting around where you open it and the plastic part just fell off. It wasn't even attached to the cardboard anymore. Really a truly terrible design. It's really a shame because finding games that originally came in these cardboard cases in decent condition is nearly impossible. And I did the best I could, but man, it was a pain in the ass to find anything even like acceptable as far as condition goes with these games. So there you go. Now, that was not the end of my exclusives for the Sega Saturn, but it was at the end of this store. But it was also not the end of stuff I picked up at this store. Next Level Games. Again, can't stress enough, great store. But in addition to the Saturn, I actually comprised, that's barely a word, I comprised lists of other consoles that had exclusives that I was interested in. Consoles that tend to be more region-free, or consoles that I have modified so I can bypass region coding, that kind of thing. Now the only one that's relevant to this video is the original Xbox. There's a list of games I wanted, and I did find one of them at Next Level Games. This is Diehard Vendetta. Now this game actually did come out in North America, but it came out for the GameCube for sure, and I think the PS2. I don't know for sure about that. But in Europe they got the Xbox version. I don't know why we didn't, but we didn't. And since the Xbox was my favorite console of that generation, except for the Dreamcast obviously, I decided I would much rather have the Xbox version. So it wasn't hard to find. It was a pretty common game. I found it multiple times after I got it at Next Level Games. And yeah man, I just went ahead and I decided I would pick it up. Now, this was all that I paid for, which I'll get into in a minute. They were very reasonable with their prices. That's the other thing I really want to stress about Next Level Games. very, very fair with their pricing, especially given the fact that they're in the UK. Now, I don't want to offend a single British person here. It's not even close to an intention of mine, but I want to make you aware if you're not, and make others aware. The UK is like the most expensive country ever, like to live in perhaps, or to visit for sure, just due to the nature of their currency. You know, because most of the people who watch this channel are from the United States, this is how I'm going to go about explaining this. $1 US is worth about half of a British pound. So more accurate, let's say $1 British pound, which is their form of currency, is worth about $2 US. Okay, not quite that high. I think it's somewhere like the $1.80 range, but you get my point. For all intents and purposes, 1 pound is basically $2. So you would think, going over there, that everything is going to look like it's half price. You know, like if you go into a store in the United States and you see, oh, there's a new PS4 game and that costs $60, mentally you think, okay, if I go into a store in the UK, because of the way the currency works, it's going to be like 30 or 35 pounds. That's what you think, but you'd be wrong. Really what happens is they just kind of flip the dollar symbol for a pound symbol and keep the number the same. So as a result, you go in, you see the same game for 60 pounds. Think about that. Just do basic math. That's like $120 for the same game. So with that in mind, even with that in mind, I should say, Next Level Games was incredibly reasonably priced. Very fair, despite that. You know what I'm saying? It was very reasonable. And at the end of the day, man, those dudes were the coolest guys ever. And they actually gave me a significant discount. I'm not going to tell you what it was. I did pay them money. Okay, this was not like, oh, here's everything for free. That did not happen. That would be crazy. I did give them money, and we came to a very fair, reasonable deal for all of the content that I acquired. And there's more than just this, which I'm going to go over in a minute. But I want you to understand that and make it very clear. That's a very reasonably priced store in an area of the world that, frankly, is not particularly cheap. So just, I want you to know that. It's definitely worth your time to check out if you are looking for exclusives and games in that part of the world. So moving on, this is where it starts to get a little weird because, like I said, I was hanging out there like all day, and Dave, who's one of the guys who runs the place, he kept walking into the back room, and he kept walking out with stuff, and he's like, do you want this? And the first up was this. This is Soul Calibur 3 for the PS2. Now, this is the North American copy. That's the way he came out. He's like, hey, Adam, you know, I got a copy of Soul Calibur 3 for the PS2. This is the American version. We can't really sell this because of region coding. So if you want it, you can just have it. Because, you know, it's not an expensive game. You know, it's like a $5 game back here. But he's like, it's not worth trying to sell because of all the problems with it. So you can just have it. So since that was great for me because I've been looking for this game for the right price. And free certainly qualified as the right price. So hell yeah. And thank you again for that. But then I realized I kind of opened Pandora's box a little bit because then Dave kept going back into the back room and coming out with more stuff. He actually walked out. He comes out with a stack of GameCube games. And he's just like, yeah, these are all the same deal. They're all American. We can't use them, so you can just have them. And I'll go through them very quickly here. 1080 Avalanche, which interestingly is not actually American. This is actually the Canadian version. It has French and English on it. That's the way I can tell. This is, I believe, the sequel to 1080 Snowboarding for the N64, which is a game I really like, so it was pretty cool to actually get this. It was never something I would have picked up on my own, but to get it for free, that's not bad, because now I might actually try it, you know what I'm saying? So that was cool of them. Extreme G3 Racing. I had never even heard of this, but racing games can be pretty fun, so that's really cool. This one was kind of weird. MLB Slugfest 2004, but inside there was also a copy of NFL Blitz 2003. And they both have the manual, and I don't know if it was ever sold this way. I don't remember that being the case, but hey, what the hell. And as far as sports games go, I do remember back in the day playing the Slugfest stuff and the Blitz stuff for a little bit, and I thought, as far as sports games goes, those were actually kind of the best ones. They were kind of like NBA Showtime or NBA Jam, if you guys remember those, but in different sports. They played very much the same way, which makes sense because Midway made them, and they made it kind of part of that series. So very cool to have that. SpongeBob SquarePants, Creature from the Krusty Krab. I had no real interest in this until I did a little research and found out this is actually one of the last GameCube games. So that's just cool to have for the novelty alone, just because yeah, this is one of the final GameCube games that actually got released. And finally, this was the one I was most excited about, was Geist. Now, I really like horror games, and this is one I've been kind of keeping an eye out for a while, and just for them to be like, yep, here you go, that was pretty great. So I was very happy about that. And it doesn't end there. This is the part I feel a little bad about. So they were going through the, obviously they knew I was looking for Sega Saturn stuff. And they were looking through, their stock and their inventory, seeing if they happened to have any of them in the back that I was looking for, but they didn't find any. But what they did find was they realized they had a lot of overstock of certain games, and they had ones that weren't in the best of condition, and they weren't expensive enough to try and sell in spite of that. So they were like, dude, we can just give them to you. And they started handing me like a stack of Sega Saturn games, ones that I already have the North American versions of. And I was very genuinely happy about that. That was really cool of them to do. But upon my second to last day in the UK, when I was kind of packing my bags, the last day is really just reserved for getting to the airport and leaving. When I'm packing my bags, I started to realize I didn't have the space in my bag to keep everything that I had acquired on my trip at that point. So I had to do the unthinkable and actually meet up with my friend Ben, Shen Muso, his awesome channel, check that out. I met up with him, which you'll see videos of that coming up soon. And I had to give him some of those things because they were better in his hands. It's his region, and I didn't know what else to do. Certainly didn't want to throw anything away. And I figured Ben is also a Sega head and a collector, and they'll be good in his hands. And I'm sorry to the guys at Next Level Games. That was really nice of you. I just didn't have space for it. If I had known that was going to be a problem, I should have known. I mean, when you're going over and you're collecting imports and stuff, those are the two things you got to remember. Stuff is expensive, and you need to care about space. I just didn't plan well enough, and I apologize for that. But yeah, Ben got to enjoy those, so yay for him. The other thing, this is where it starts to get very bizarre, was that Dave kept, at this point, once Dave had run out of like Saturn stuff, he goes in the back and just starts looking for things. And what he came out with first was he just comes out, he's like, hey Adam, do you want, what is this, a steel case for Dead Island Riptide? I was like, sure. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's for the Xbox 360. Now, the game wasn't in there. I already own the game. Just pop it in, and it becomes the new case for the game. And what the hell? Steel case for Dead Island Riptide. Why not? And then he comes out with another one. This was very serendipitous, which I mentioned in the most recent episode of Playload. This one was for Metal Gear Rising. Now, that's cool because I had only picked up the game like a week before that. Still haven't played it. I haven't had the time. But he's like, yeah, you want a steel case for Metal Gear Rising? I was like, okay. Upon opening it, I realized, like, okay, so there was no game in there. Does that mean you can just buy a steel case separately in the UK? Can someone confirm that? Because I didn't know you could do that. It was odd that they just had sealed steel cases with no game. But anyway, I went ahead and put the game in there. And upon opening it, I actually saw this. And this little card right there is actually a little DLC voucher for something called Inferno Armor. Now, this is where it gets very ironic. Despite the Xbox 360 being region-coded, its DLC is not. I was actually able to successfully redeem that, which was really strange and really cool. So, hey, why not? That was awesome. So some free DLC out of that, as well as the steel case. And yeah, that's what I picked up at Next Level Games. Again, it's a store that I cannot recommend enough. The dudes there are so genuine, so awesome, and so real. It's just something, if you're in the UK, you just got to go there. You just got to go there and hang out. I mean, again, make sure you know the hours that they're open and all that, but it really was an awesome store. And it was very flattering to me personally because, and I'm sure they're watching this, of course, that's the whole point. They watched this channel, and that was, they kept, I've never had that experience before, by the way, of being in a place where like everyone has seen your work and is talking about your work just right there with you. It's almost, I don't want to say celebrity tour type of thing, but that's what it almost felt like at times. It was very bizarre to me. It was very flattering, it was very cool, and they made me feel very comfortable and just, I felt almost, even though I'm not from there, I felt very at home in that store. It was really a great place to be. So I really do hope I get to go back there. And I know I sound like a broken record, but I really can't stress it enough that you guys should check it out if you ever get the chance. And so that's it for this video. Stay tuned for more videos of other stores I went to. And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later.